What happens now? You'll get over heartache. You'll get over heartache. You'll get over heartache.
Good evening, St. Lucia, and welcome to yet another episode of What's Happening Now with Laura. But before we start this evening's show, I want to thank all of you who sent me messages to find out how I was doing, who sent get better wishes, and who were just all around concerned with my well-being. I want to thank you all for that. So sometimes you need a break, and your body tells you that. And these things happen, but I want to thank you very much for thinking of me, keeping me in your prayers, and all around just being concerned about me and you know, missing me. It's always humbling when I'm off the air for whatever reason, and people send me those messages and ask, "Are you okay? What's going on? You weren't on. I was sitting, I was waiting for you." Hi, Annie. I know you must be sitting with your popcorn right now, waiting for me to get on, and I am on this week as promised last week. So having said all of this, this month being the month of culture, and 2 days from now being La Marguerite Day, I want to say to all the Marguerites out there, vive la Marguerite, vive la Marguerite encore. In a few weeks, in a couple of weeks, it will be Journée Creole, and we all will be profiting that opportunity to eat gluttonously. Some of us would say drink excessively. Some of us say and just have a merry old time. But while we're doing all of this, when we're going to be enjoying the Grand Séance in a couple of days, and we're going to have all of this humongous fetting happening in a couple of weeks, I want us to stop and ponder about what culture really means to us. What really is culture? And I know in the past few years, we've been harping a lot about what is culture, and we sometimes use it interchangeably with heritage and tradition, and there's all this big fuss every year around this time about what is culture and preserving our culture and all of that. So what exactly is culture? So tonight we're not going to have a guest. We're just going to be chatting about a few things. I'm going to throw out a few things out to you and open the lines and have you discuss it and give me your feedback and your views. So get ready to call. I honestly really would like to hear your feedback on some of the things that I threw out there. And some of them are going to be a little bit out there, but it's going to be something for everybody. So let's start with what exactly is culture, because we hear this ubiquitously. You know, it's our culture. It's carnival time. That's our culture. It's the largest cultural display we have in St. Lucia. It's jazz, and it's become the culture, and then there are always this tussle between various cultural activities and how Carnival gets the lion's share of the cultural pie, and how the flower festivals are like the bastard child of the culture, and that some might say it's more indigenous to St. Lucia than Carnival, and why Carnival gets all of this expense, this resources thrown at it, how many millions of dollars, and the flower festivals are getting just, you know, pittance. Now, I will say that as a child, I was very taken with the flower festivals. I aligned and associated more with La Roz because I thought they were more vibrant and they were more fouillant, you know, that phrase that they, you know, just more involved, and they suited my personality a lot more, I felt, than the La Marguerite. And the colors were more vibrant, the music was more vibrant, and I really enjoyed, although I never really participated, but I always aligned myself with La Roz more than I did with La Marguerite. But lately I've decided that I'm going to participate a little bit more as a, not necessarily as a participant, but more as an onlooker, take in the festivities a little bit more. And of course, it helps when you have the younger generation. And because the festivals are dying out, the schools make a more concerted effort, and some of the communities make a more concerted effort to introduce the traditions to our younger generation. So my niece last year was Wen La Marguerite, and this year she was a princess. And so, you have to support the youngsters in whatever the endeavor is. So I took in the Grand Séance on Sunday in Labrie. And I must say that people came out and they supported, and there was this pushback between the Lawas supporters who came out just to support the culture, as we say, but really the tradition or the heritage. And the tussle between the La Marguerite and the Lawas, that was there a little bit. And then you found there's a new paradigm shift. There's a new paradigm called the Magwas, persons who participate fully in both the La Marguerite and the Lawas festivals. So I took that. But one of the things that I noted that was missing for all the talk and the furor and from certain quarters about the festivals, I found the participation very lackluster. So you found the usual suspects were all into it and whatever, but the younger ones that they're trying to push in, they were not really feeling it. They're there because, well, they're asked to be there. It's a tradition passed on from generation to generation. Their grandmother, the great-grandmother was a Marguerite, so the grandmother became a Marguerite and raised her children to be Marguerites, and the grandchildren became Marguerites, and sometimes the great-grandchildren are Marguerites, and it's like, oh my God, it's like, I just have to be there because you want me to be there, but I'm not really feeling it. That was the feeling that I got. In spite of the fact that the older guys, the older generation, were really into the festivities. So there was a little bit of that. So I thought a little bit about what our culture was, I was listening to Louise Victor on NTN. I tried to get the whole thing, but I only got like maybe snippets, 5 minutes of it. So I didn't really get the whole gist of everything she was talking about, but it sparked an interest. And every year, I dedicate at least a show in October for culture, because I think we're sometimes being hypocritical where our culture is concerned, and we like to bandy around the term culture. It's our culture. Carnival is our culture, and the way we speak is our culture, and this and that is our culture. And Rick always says it's the culture. He always throws that in our faces when we do certain things. And really and truly, what is culture? What is culture? And are we using the phrase, the terminology correctly? And if we're not using it correctly, maybe is that's the reason why we have somewhat of a disconnect in what we do. So anyway, culture. Culture is defined as the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. I'll say that again. The arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. Or another definition that I Googled, the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. The customs, what we do, our art, our social institutions, our achievements of our nation, our people, and other social groups. And so it begs, where does the Marguerite and the Journée Creole and the Carnival and all of that fits in here within the culture, arts? So one may say it's an expression of art, our dancing, if we could call it that, during Carnival time is the arts. I basically don't think necessarily gyrating all over the place and stimulating sexual acts as art, but hey, that's my preference. But is it a culture? Is it pervasive enough throughout our society to be culture? And so then I thought about, so if that is culture, then what is our heritage? What is our heritage? So we have these, you know, and the simplest, I've never forgotten it since I've learned it as a kid. Culture is the way of life of a people, our food, our drink, our eat, how we dance, how we dress, you know, very simple, never forgot it. The way of life of a people, right? So that's our culture. And then there's the heritage. So culture, the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society, and heritage, aspects of culture which are inherited to the present and which will be preserved for the future. Heritage, aspects of culture which are inherited to the present, not anything that we did here and now, but things that we inherited. So like, for instance, our grandparents died and left us a house or piece of land. We didn't work for it per se, but our grandparents did and they left it to us. So that's our heritage, and which will be preserved for the future. And the idea is hopefully that we don't squander it and that we can have it for our grandchildren to enjoy. So that's our heritage. So when we think of Jeune Creole and we think of all the madras that we're going to be wearing and the traditional way of wearing it. So when we put our jupon and our the madras skirt and then the top and that kind of thing in the way our grandparents and great-grandparents wore it, that is our heritage. That's what they've handed down to us. But as you will see, as Jeune Creole is around the corner, you will see all of the fashion. Yes, they use the madras, which is the fabric that was handed down, but in different styles, which has now become the culture. So we'll have the pum-pum shorts in a madras, and we go to Jeune Creole and we say, yeah, boy, we in the culture, and we really expressing our culture. And in a way, we're correct. But are we really, are these festivals really supposed to be exalting our culture or our heritage? Now, culture, as I said before, is prone to change. So it is the way of life of a people today. So that is what the culture of a nation is. This is what the culture of a society is. It's what's happening today, how we eat, how we drink, how we dress. This is what's happening today. So culture is prone to change, but heritage, not so much. So again, it begs the question, when we celebrate those Creole festivals and the Magwit and the La Rose and all of that, are we preserving our culture or are we preserving our heritage? Culture is created by people. Heritage, on the other hand, is inheritance of culture, past tense, because you have inheritance, so it came before you, to the present and future generations. So inheritance of culture to the present and future generations. So our heritage is nothing that we caused. It's something that we got from those who came before us. Culture also is created on present identities. So if we identify as a nation that is all into dance hall and into crime, for instance, and we'll go a little bit into that a little later on, then that becomes our culture, right? But our heritage provides identity to the evolution of one culture, bearing evidence to the roots of a culture and mankind on the whole. So our heritage is everything that came before. Everything that came before, how our people lived before and how their forebears lived before and handed down over the years, over the generations to us. So that's our heritage. Now, then there's the tradition, you know. What is the main difference between our culture and our traditions? Well, the main difference between culture and, or tradition is that culture is the ideas, duties, and social behavior of a particular generation. And I want to stress on that, of a particular generation, whereas tradition is the transmission of particular customs and beliefs from one generation to the next. So there are certain things that we continue to do today, certain beliefs that we continue to hold near and dear to us today, that forms part of our culture today, that were handed over from our heritage. So we took that from our heritage and we continue to manifest and to practice it. And I was having a conversation with somebody earlier, and then the first thing that came up to them, you mean like obia and like you know, gade and that kind of thing? You know, it is pervasive in our culture today, but it's not anything that we caused to happen within this generation. It was something that was passed on from generation to generation. So I thought, well, considering it's Creole Heritage Month, maybe that's an apt example of what a tradition is, that has something that is inherent within our culture today that was prevalent before us, and that will probably be pervasive in the other generations to come. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty right now, but so we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion on culture and heritage. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
You'll get over heartache. You'll get over heartache. Carry on, don't fear the fall, 'cause you'll get over heartache.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying tuned to what's happening now with Laura, and hopefully our little glitch has been fixed and we can move on. So before the break, we were talking about culture versus tradition versus heritage, and I gave you a few definitions of what it was: culture, the way of life of our people today; heritage, what was handed down to us from our forebears, not necessarily practiced today; and traditions being something that was passed on from our forebears, but still continued today. So we have traditions, we have our culture, and we have our heritage. But how pervasive, so we always talk about culture and we use the three terms interchangeably, and really they're not. And I really would like to see a paradigm shift in that regard, where we actually use the terms as they're supposed to be, and they use, you know, and break free from that culture that we've developed for ourselves, where we don't care to define things and to use them in the way that they're supposed to be used. So culture is not necessarily our heritage. So when we celebrate Je ne Creole, we're not necessarily celebrating our culture, despite the fact that we still speak Creole far and wide, and we still cook in a Creole manner somewhat, because we don't necessarily always cook on a coal pot. Typically, we cook on gas stove. We don't use coals. We don't use fouillé de feu. We don't use that kind of thing as a normal course of life, of living. We do it as an homage to our heritage, but not necessarily, you know, use it every day. So, yeah. So when in October, when we celebrate Creole Heritage Month, we are paying homage to things that our forebears did, but not necessarily that we do. We continue today as a normal, as a normal course of living. And we do have some of our traditions that we continue. So we are traditionally a Christian nation, and so we've maintained that. We are traditionally a Catholic nation. And by and large, we still are, even though we're only about 65% Catholic, but we still are, by and large, traditionally a Catholic nation. And speaking of Christianity, which brings me to an issue that is being playing all over the news and still continues to be plagued the news, especially in light of the recent murder of a young black up-and-coming professional in Texas by the police. So we have a Tatiana Jefferson who was gunned down in her home while she was playing with her 8-year-old nephew by the police. And it's eerily similar to what has happened to Botham Jean. So I want to touch a little bit on that, considering we call ourselves a Christian nation by and large, and the backlash that has been happening around the world, but more specifically in St. Lucia, because I can speak for us, because we say we love to bandy that around and say we're a Christian nation. You know, we're traditionally a Christian nation. It's our culture to be forgiving and to be loving. Yet, at the end of the trial, of Botham Jean's trial, or Amber Guyger's trial for killing Botham Jean, when Branch Jean said he forgave Amber Guyger for killing his brother, despite it having such an obviously negative effect on him, and that he forgave her and that he loved her as a person, and he felt compelled to do it, even though he had not discussed it with his family first. He could speak for himself, and he felt compelled to do it because he felt that's what his older brother would have done. And that was what was played out in court, how much of a Christian and loving person that Botham Jean was. So to me, it was no big surprise when Branch Jean said he forgave Amber Guyger, and that he wanted to give her a hug, and pleading with those puppy eyes. He wanted to give her a hug. Please, judge, allow me to give her a hug. And the judge agreed, and he hugged her and had this protracted hug, and she basically ran to him, and you know the works, you've seen it all, and it's going to be etched in our memory for time to come. And the backlash was fast and furious. And how could this young man forgive this murderous human being, this excrement, this excuse for a human being? How could he forgive her? But yet we say that we are a Christian nation, and that we want to be more like Christ, and how he forgave us our sins, and how he died for our sins. But when the test really came, when it came time for us to test our mettle, we were not very forgiving. We were not very Christian-like, and we still aren't very Christian-like. And so it'd be interesting to see how we can reconcile our tradition of being Christian with our actuality. We could not forgive, we could not understand, and how if it were us, we would never forgive and never forget. Nobody's saying that you had to forget, but if the young man felt within his heart that he had to forgive her in order to move on, we always talk about it. Forgiveness is not just for the forgiven, but it is also, it is most importantly for the forgiver. So why can't we understand that? And why are we lashing out at a young man, 18 years old, who has shown more restraint than we could ever show in our little fingers in our entire lifetime? Now, the judge, to my mind, on the other hand, was a whole different kettle of fish. Because to me, a judge should always be seen to be impartial. Doesn't matter how much your heart is bleeding. It doesn't matter how much you feel for a young life gone down the drain. You ought always to be seen as impartial, and a judgment was handed down, and you commiserated with the family, the victims here, and everything. You had no business going in there and getting a Bible and bringing it out to Amber Guyger and hugging her and telling her, you know what? At the end of the day, how I saw it, it was just a publicity stunt. This judge wanted to have 5 more minutes of fame, and so she went out there. I'm not saying that I'm not forgiving. I'm not saying that I don't understand a Christian culture or a Christian move. But what I'm saying is you have a private office, you have private chambers. Amber Guyger is going to jail. She's going to be accessible to you and to others. Why not do it there? Why play it out in front of the cameras? I thought the judge was out of order. The judge was not in her place. Not saying that she could not be a compassionate judge, a compassionate human being, but you've set a precedent. So I wonder now how the other judge in the Tatiana, you know, these names always get me. Tatiana's murder trial is going to feel compelled now to show pity on the cop. And thank God he resigned. He didn't run away, and he didn't, hide and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see how that's going to play out, because, both in Texas, how this one is going to play out versus the Botham Jean's trial. But how are other judges going to feel compelled to act? You've set a precedent. How are you going to act now? How are you going to get into that space whenever you hear a case? Are people going to always expect you to show the same compassion that you did to Amber Guyger when you're convicting a black person? Are you going to extend the same compassion to that person? Are you going to now reach out to the person and hug them and tell them you've been given an opportunity to change your life, and here's a Bible, and here's where it starts, for God so loved the world? Are you going to do that with every case? So that's the precedent. But that's not the issue right now. The point I'm trying to drive here is how unchristian-like we were in our backlash and our treatment of Brandt Jean when he said that he forgave Amber Guyger because he felt that's what his brother would have wanted for her, is to change her life and give her life to Christ. But that was how Botham was played out in the news. That's how it was played out in the media. This larger-than-life Christian boy, young man, rather, because he wasn't a boy anymore, he was 26 years old, this larger-than-life Christian young man who wanted to change the world and wanted to change it with love and compassion. So what's wrong with that? Now, speaking of love and compassion, right here in St. Lucia, we don't give a damn about our brothers and sisters. We don't give a damn about those who were gunned down, whether it's by the police or whether it's by ourselves. When I say ourselves, other persons in society. We don't give a damn about that. Look, just this week, we had a sister attempting to murder her younger brother because of some gold that he supposedly allegedly stole from her, and that, you know, he was going to have to pay for it, and that he went 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times to stab him, and each time she was thwarted, but she succeeded at one point in stabbing him, so much so that he's now going to probably miss out the better part of the year of school because what? His sister thought that the best Christian thing to do was the Cain and Abel thing and stab her brother. Is that what we're saying is our culture? Is that what we're saying is more palatable to us as opposed to forgiveness? Is that what our culture is? It certainly isn't our heritage. It certainly isn't a tradition. So is that what our culture is? A culture of non-mediation, non-understanding, you know, is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And, you know, like somebody said, if you kill me, I kill you back. You know, how's that going to happen? I don't know, but that's what she said. You know, is that the culture? Is that the culture of a non-Christian, like unforgiving society? Just this evening, we were watching on the news this young man who was, you know, we don't know what his background is. It may not be squeaky clean, but that's not the point, because that's what they were trying to portray both them as, you know, this person that seemed to be squeaky clean, but ain't that squeaky clean. And even Joshua Brown, who, you know, testified and was critical to the judgment against Amber Geiger, that he was shot and killed, and so all of a sudden, because his background wasn't so squeaky clean, you know, all of that was played out in the media and all of that, and he's not such a nice guy after all, so he deserved what he got, kind of thing. But then we were seeing right here in St. Lucia a mother. Now we cannot vouch for the veracity, but we're saying that she is saying this on camera, and so it is recorded. And so the police now has a task ahead of them to verify, one, or debunk what the lady was saying. That she told the police that there were threats against the son, that she reported him missing and that they didn't believe her, and that now that he's found dead and she wants to see him before he's taken to the morgue, they won't allow her to see him. And the way she was manhandled, you know, and this little slight woman, is that what we're saying our culture is? You know, here is a mother who's obviously distraught, and we cannot allow her. And I don't know what the protocol is. It may very well be that the protocol is to extract the body and take it away. But I've seen murder crime scenes, where people are walking all over the scene. Police officers without their boots covered, you know, as we expect them to be, so they're not tracking in evidence from somewhere over, you know, where they came from and depositing it on the crime scene. They're just walking there, you know. The most they probably have gloves on, but their shoes are not gloved. They're not covered in protective gear. So fibers from their clothes could be falling on to the crime scene. We don't know how that could be preserved, but you will deny a mother an opportunity to see her son one last time before you take him to the morgue, and you're manhandling her and you're telling her, relax, you know, you know, and you know, it's just crazy. Is that what our culture is? Is that the culture that we have? The culture where we don't care? The culture where anything goes and we can just treat people any which way and not for a moment think about how affected they are and how they're grieving and how to be compassionate and how to be understanding? Because it very well could be our family the next time. Oh, but it was the police's family. Because the guy, the 36th murder for the year, homicide for the year, was the son of a cop. And he wants justice. He's asking for justice. Now, I would love to see the outcome, how the outcome of that would play. Because here is a cop who is demanding justice for his son who was gunned down. How many in the past 5 years have not gotten justice for their loved ones? In 2015, 28 homicides. How many of them have been solved? 2016, we had 30. How many families received justice? 2017, we had 60, and we know the vast majority have not been solved, have not been detected. Remember that little thing called impacts? Still hovering over our head, causing us to suffer the brunt of the Leahy Law and ending effectively any and all aid from the U.S., our greatest ally. In 2018, we had 43 homicides. How many of them, how many of the families have gotten justice? In 2019, so far for the year, we have had 37. How many families are going to get justice? So while we're very happy that Amber Geiger has been made to pay woefully inadequately, I might add woefully inadequately, whereas she's been made to pay by incarceration for her role in murdering Botham Jean. We were all up in that. How come we are not all up in those various murders that I've mentioned earlier? 28 in 2015, 13 2016, 16 2017, 43 in 2018, and 37 so far in 2019. How come we're not all up in arms? How come we're not marching until our soles, the soles of our shoes, have holes in them? How come we're letting our politicians off the hook? Off the hook. How come this is the culture which we have adopted for ourselves? One of a hands-off approach. And a lot of the times, you hear people talking about, we have to do something. The only time we talk about it, only time we talk about how we have to do something and how a situation is untenable and unacceptable is when it has hit home. When it has happened in our very backyard. I will never forget one of the very first shows that I did 4 years ago, dealing with rape, and a particular young woman called and asked me why I was so passionate about rape. Is it because I had been raped before? That is our culture. Or is it? Or is that the culture that we want to know that you can only be passionate about something, that you can only advocate against something only if it affects you directly? Is that the culture we want to be known for? Is that what our culture is all about? We're due for a break. When we come back, a few more issues, and then we'll open the lines so that I can hear your views on what you think our culture is, whether it's one of crime, of unforgiveness, and uncreativity. See you on the other side of the break. Welcome back and thank you for staying tuned to What's Happening Now with Laura. So this week marked the start of Productivity and Competitiveness Week put on by the NCPC. And my partner and I had the opportunity to address the opening ceremony of NCPC, Competitiveness and Productivity Week, and the topic was productivity through research and innovation. And in my speech, I talked a little bit about creativity and how we have to think outside of the box, and how innovation is not just for manufacturers or for creators or for developers, it's also for our thinking. How we think, what we do, how we step out of the box a little bit and do things a little bit differently. Sometimes it's not even about what we it's not about being inventive, which is creating something totally new. It's about being innovative in our thinking and applying it to perhaps not the non-traditional ways of doing it. So in my presentation, I said that innovation was seeing what everybody else saw, but thinking what nobody else has thought. Sometimes it's even more simple than that. And I made mention to the fact that we render aid to our sister isles every year, pretty much, during the hurricane season. So invariably, one of our sister isles are stricken by these super hurricanes we've been seeing of late. And the one that comes closest to mind right now is Hurricane Dorian and the Bahamas. And prior to that was Hurricanes Irma and Maria hitting Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda. I mean, pretty much flattening Dominica and Barbuda, and doing the same for a couple of islands in the Bahamas this year. That's Hurricane Dorian. And that how we always send aid, and how we always talk, but before we send aid, prior to all of that, we always talk about being innovative and finding new markets and jump-starting and finding creative ways of financing our industry, our manufacturing industry, and creating entrepreneurs. And we expect these young people to leave school with basic education. And I say basic education because education does not necessarily always have to take place within the hollowed walls, maybe termite ridden hollowed walls, hollowed, not hallowed, but hollowed, literally, walls of our educational systems, institutions. But it can happen in untraditional places as well. And so these kids, they leave school with basic education, and we expect them to develop this entrepreneurial spirit. And yes, we have some seriously innovative young people out there who are very creative, the way their mind works, and they come up with all of these ideas. But are they really entrepreneurs? Do they have the skills? Do they have the resources, financial and otherwise, to become entrepreneurs? Because when you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner. You're not just somebody who just creates things, but you have to find the finances. You have to match that with your ability to create things. And you're not always going to find a grantor or a donor agency to give you funds to help you. Sometimes we have to look in untraditional places, and our governments traditionally have spoken. They've exhorted all of us to become entrepreneurs. You know, don't leave school expecting to get a job, because jobs are few and far between. Although on the political platform around election time, there's always this job creations, remember, jobs, and more jobs, and $100 million injected in the economy immediately upon assuming reins, and, you know, cha-ching, in our pockets and all of that. Oh, great, wonderful sound bites. But when it comes time to putting our money's where our mouth is, when it comes to really creating the platform, that's all governments could do, you know. They can't create jobs. Job creation is a function of the private sector. All government can really do is to create a platform, a days where we can become competitive, and we can become, we can do what we do and create jobs. That's all they can do. When it comes time to doing that, They don't. They don't. So, for instance, I said, we take funds that we barely have because we're always told from time immemorial that our coffers are empty, they're bankrupt, yet past administration after past administration insults the integrity and the intelligence of the people and accuses the previous administration or the incumbent administration of corruption and bubble and all that. They don't know where they're doing the bubble and how they're doing the corrupt deeds and how they're stealing the money if we supposedly have no money. So anyway, every year we take monies out of our dwindling coffers and we send it across to our sister isles for aid, and we say, okay, we're magnanimous, we don't have a good healthcare system, but we're going to send across this money. We don't have education is woefully inadequate, but we're going to send across this money. And that money is going to be used to stimulate another economy, not ours. So I suggested, why can't we use that money here in our country to stimulate our economy, to give young entrepreneurs that start when we know that they have resources, we have technology here that we can export to these other countries. And so instead of sending $100,000 across, we can send $100,000 worth of technology across, because they're going to need that technology. They're going to spend that money on acquiring that technology to rebuild the economy. So why can't we spend it here and send across the technology, send across the units, the products that they need, and to stimulate our economy here? And somebody thought I was being too big for my britches. And I'm like, okay, is it because I am female? Because all the feedback that I got from, guess whom? Guess the quarters, male counterparts were, yes, this is how direct foreign aid really works. And I'm going to have a show a little sometime later on to talk about direct foreign aid and how it works, and how we can use whatever little aid that we have in terms of sending monies across, and use it as tied aid rather than actual aid, sending monies across, or project aid or multilateral aid or whatever. There's so many different types of aid, and we just have to think a little bit outside the box. And it really should not be thinking outside of the box for governments, because that's their job. We have technocrats that we pay salaries that some of us can only dream about. And you're not thinking in those ways, and we in the private sector have to think. So I was complimented on my thinking from certain quarters, but from other quarters, and guess what? Some of it came from females, and I'm not saying that it came from the persons who were actually there, because I got a lot of the feedback from after the parts of the speech was aired. And, you know, I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And here we have Felicia Brown, love her, bless her soul, a women's rights activist, saying that, you know, all these monuments that we're putting up all of these monuments, and they depict men and not women, and how is it that we're not represented? We're not represented because when it counts, when we have to say something, when we are in a position to impact change, we do nothing and we say nothing. And then we're going to quibble over those little insignificant things. You think I care about whose bust is put out there, when really and truly the matters, the nitty-gritty underground is so much more overwhelming than a bust? And by the way, I have no problems with monuments and artistic expressions being on display and signifying whatever and be trying to be motivational. But you ask the question, begs the question, at what cost? And is it the appropriate time to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on monuments when our economy, in a real tangible way, that money could be spent to stimulate our economy in little pockets that could redound to job creations, that could redound to, you know, uplifting the image of our country, you know, and all of that kind of thing. Are we sane in our minds? Are we sane in our thinking, in our psyche, when we're coming up with all of these grandiose ideas? Where is our creativity? Where is our innovativeness? Where is our ability to think outside the box, to create and to stimulate and to do all of those things that we say that we are capable of doing? The lines are now opened for your calls. The number will be put up on the screen. It's 4519788. Or you can send us your WhatsApp messages on 284-6536. That's 284-6536. The number again is 4519788. I would be interested in hearing from you what your thoughts are on some of the issues that we've talked about. And you can send us your emails at laurajepi@gmail.com. That's laurajepi@gmail.com. WhatsApp platform is 284-6536, and the lines are open at 4519788. I think we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, the lines are open just for you so that you can comment on what I've talked about or anything that's bugging you. See you soon. Thank you for staying tuned. I'm so sorry. We're having some technical difficulties. I can't hear in my earpiece that we were back on. But again, as I said before we went on break, the number to call is 4519788. The WhatsApp platform is 284-6536. And the email is laurajepi@gmail.com. So, lines are open. Let's hear you and what your thoughts are, and what you think about what I said earlier. Are we a culture that is devoid of compassion and forgiveness, stricken by crime-motivated ideologies, uncreative in our thinking, paying just lip service to young people? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Anyway, so while we wait for your calls, one of the things that really struck me when I was listening to the chief of police in Fort Worth talking about the Tatiana Jefferson case is the fact that he was saying that they now have to do and I think they learned from the Dallas situation, because they're saying now that they have to We look at the use of force policy, the de-escalation policy, the lethal force policy, and I keep thinking, but isn't that something that should happen here, right here in St. Lucia? Because we hear of all of these cop killings, you know, even with in 2017, we had 60 murders, and a huge chunk of that had to do with police killings. When are we going to hear what the results of impacts was? Are we going to see a case where we are looking at our use of force policy, our de-escalation policy? Do we even have those? What are those? When are we going to hear about that? And that could help us, I think, go a long way to restoring our confidence in our people, to the police, and foreign aid. I'm having some problems with my earpiece, I think. All right. Is that something that we can adopt? Is that something that we can say, okay, coming out of that? Because I like to think that when tragedy hits us, that we can find a nugget, just one little nugget of a learning moment or a teachable moment, and that we can take that and expand that and to create a situation where these things don't happen anymore, right? So what are the teachable moments for us when we think about how unforgiving we are and how ununderstanding, in my own word, that we are? We have a call online. Thank you for calling. You're on the air. Good night. I'm sorry, can you speak up a little louder, please? I can hardly hear you. But is that something that we want our nation to be known for? Do we want to be known as a people who we treat each other like animals, except when it's removed from us? I think we lost that call. Okay, I think that the call dropped. But I understand and I concur with the caller that people are so desensitized they don't care. But is that what we really want to be known as an unfeeling people who don't care, people who we treat each other? If we can treat our family, look at the young lady who stabbed her brother. I mean, that's her brother. That's her flesh. That's her blood. That is somebody that she caused to be truant from school to take care of her kids. That talks about somebody who is selfish. That talks about somebody who doesn't care. That talks about a narcissist who would stab her brother in the blink of an eye because of some perceived infraction. And then decide to hide. Why are you hiding? If what you did, you felt so justified in wanting to do that, then why are you hiding? Why not just stay and let yourself be found and face the music? It's because somewhere in your psyche, you know that what you're doing is wrong. So is that what we want the world to think of us? A people who don't care about each other, but is only concerned when it is a stranger. When it is a stranger who has inflicted harm on us. And is it that we only care because when harm or misfortune affects what we call an upstanding citizen? We have another call online. Thank you for calling. You're on the air. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Thank you for calling.
Laura, it's you know, the problem we have is we keep on saying what the sad state of affairs is. The horses are bolted. The horses are very popular with these days. The horses bolted a long time ago because nobody cared. It's not because they weren't talking about it, because as somebody pointed out recently, I, for one, have made a career writing about the problems way back when they were beginning. When I started writing about guns in the country, the only people who had guns were the police. And they had done some pretty awful things, like shooting a guy at what was it, Mount Jimmy or whatever, the Terry James case, a number of cases. And I warned that the other side will arm themselves. And over the years, I wrote on that scene, Laura. So we are where we are now. Now the guys say they have more artillery than the police. The police themselves are saying the guys are almost beyond them. Now, even the police force itself, the police force didn't suddenly get like that. And we knew, because we've been complaining about the police force for a long time. And I don't want to blame the police force. I'm blaming the people who are supposed to sustain the police force and didn't care really enough to realize the police needed more than a couple of vehicles and they needed more than a couple of recruits. They had to bring up a police force for the modern age, modern crime, if you like. The rapes that have been going on here, the number of little children who appear pregnant before our courts with no report by the hospital or anybody even having to pay. All of those things have been. And last week I took on the whole thing about crisis, healthcare crisis. We have never been other than in a situation of a health crisis, and it continues. And one of the reasons, among the reasons, Laura, is that the government, and not one, the government, and a building, hospital building doesn't change it, by the way, because we had buildings before. That is not the main problem. The main problem is the actual caregiving. So you can have the nicest building and guys who don't really give a damn, or people who cannot afford. There's a report, I wish the government would make it public. There's a report associated, believe it or not, with Jufali, and when they were considering St. Lucia for a research center of diabetes. They actually did a report on that. Dr. King was part of that commission. So we know, and that report exposes how much trouble we're in as far as health is concerned. Number one, that we don't get assistance, we don't get aid for non-communicable diseases. So cancer, diabetes, and those sort of diseases have gone almost untended for years. The main remedy for diabetes is to cut people's legs off. Remember, George, one by one, he lost his limb. And you see a lot of people like that. And we have not questioned those things. Listen to your campaigning politicians right now. None of them is actually talking about the problem of healthcare. The way they're talking about it is somebody didn't finish our hospital and we're going to finish it. That's not where it's at. We have a problem that people, insurance or not, I don't believe any kind of insurance scheme personally is going to afford the health care that solutions need. We have neglected ourselves. We've neglected the medical care. We don't care about teaching our kids to eat properly. We're not into prevention. And by the way, what I'm saying there is not news. It has been said before by people years and years ago before my time that these islands will never be in a position to properly operate hospitals. And so we should put a big focus on preventive measures, like teaching kids why they should not smoke early. Now we're finding every kind of reason why we should smoke, why we should do it. So what has happened here right now, and I don't want to stay on the phone too long, what has happened right now is we are in crisis country, but every aspect of St. Lucia is crisis and has been crisis for a lot of years. And I really wish we would stop saying bigger, smaller, greater crisis, because crisis is crisis and no comparatives in there. But the only people we are fooling ourselves. I was saying about this meeting I was held on Sunday. You didn't hear one person. For example, you heard the leader of the opposition say, we're going to stop the corruption. But he did not itemize any of the corruption, whether on his party or the other party, and say what he knows about them and what exactly he's going to do about them. and take that for every other aspect. This year's whatever campaign is going on right now, the words are the same as the previous campaign. That's the politicians for you. And the people, of course, endorse it with our, I don't want to say we are stupid people, our convenient stupidity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rick, for calling, and I'm not disappointed with your contribution, and this is what I want to hear. And I'll start with what you said at the end there when you talked about, we're going to wage war on corruption. And one of the things that struck me as odd, and I say odd because, we're always talking about it. I think there are a couple of cases still in the courts pending on corruption of this administration previously, while the past administration was in power. And then we're talking about an integrity commission, and we're going to give it teeth, with real bite, and we're going to strengthen it with lawyers and paralegals and these people and courts and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But what are the outcomes? Are we ever going to see a politician go to jail for alleged corruption? I mean, when you, as the leader of the opposition, can say that you're going to investigate a politician who in the third year of his term can now purchase or cause to build a 3-story home on his politician's salary, that there must be some sort of corruption going on, then I say to you, sir, maybe the politicians are woefully inadequately compensated for serving the country, if it is that on their salaries they cannot afford a home, any kind of home that their hearts desire. If it is that we're saying that on a person's salary, based on a person's salary, it doesn't matter how prudent they are in their fiscal affairs or whatever, they can't afford certain things by dint of their profession, then something is woefully wrong. And so shouldn't we spend our energies more on fixing that and ensuring that every St. Lucian can dream and dream big and achieve their dreams? We have another call online. Thank you for calling. You're on the air. Hello?
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
Yeah, actually, that's the first time I'm calling your show, but it's so impressive tonight. I have to talk about it. Talking about corruption.
Mm-hmm.
The corruption in itself is nothing much, but it's the after, what we're getting after the corruption. We had administration upon administration taking our little taxpayers' money and making investigations of corruption and all this crap.
Mm-hmm.
As you see, nobody go to jail. Nobody account for or pay for anything. So why the opposition now is coming again in an election year and telling us they go investigate corruption, where they themselves have issues they haven't cleared up yet. They have people in the courts. So how long will it take the little money we have to go through this process? And right now, we're begging. Every month, you hear 3 months, the government going to the house and ask for money to borrow for our personal stuff in this country. So what's going on, Laura?
And that's the question we need to ask, and not just ask it of people like me, but we need to ask it of our politicians when they come to us, when they're canvassing us for our votes. What are your intentions? So when we're going to strengthen the Integrity Commission, and we have had an Integrity Commission before, and it has gone nowhere, and so now it's manned just by a secretary, are you surprised? And so when you give it teeth and you employ all these people, you're going to bloat your workforce even more, and then you're going to be putting even more demands. What are we going to see, as you said about that? Are we going to continue to sit on our hands and say, them fellas just coming to do a ball and them fellas just coming to say it for themselves? Are we going to continue to be satisfied as a lazy people and not agitate for real change? And that's what I'm asking. What is our culture? What is our mindset? And Rick mentioned a lot of things, and he's talking about this didn't happen right now, and I tend to agree. The chickens now have come home to roost because we have incubated a culture that we are now seeing manifest today. You know, we're now seeing more criminals have more weaponry, better weaponry, more powerful weaponry than the police, who used to be the only organization, only institution, only set of people with guns in this country. Are we saying that that's okay? We talk about healthcare crisis. We talk about all of that. But have we really done anything tangible? Have we ever looked? I mean, just last month, I went to the community of PI, and it would be surprised. PI was one of the communities as a child growing up that was most active. Today, every other household had an amputee, somebody who was stricken with diabetes, and their limbs had to be amputated. Have we ever taken the time and allocated resources to find out why that is and how we can change the mindset of the people, cause a paradigm shift to effect a real change, a real sensible, tangible change that the future generation does not have to inherit? Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate your call so much.
I have to continue, Laura.
Sorry, go ahead.
I have to continue. Healthcare, I must continue, because every time again, we hear about our healthcare and our crisis. Over 15 years, we have healthcare. In fact, we have that for eons. We have two institutions, the St. Jude's and the elephant we have in Catherine. So, come on,
the
OKEU. Owen King. That's the big one. Administration of one administration has come through, and nobody cannot open it. And nobody never come and tell the people why. The overhead cost is so high to maintain a hospital of that size. They don't want to tell us that. They're telling us all kind of thing. We have to go through NIC and all that stuff and Laura, let me tell you something. This administration will go, and another one will come, and this hospital won't be open yet.
I tend to agree with you. I can see the trend.
Because it is one big issue. With this kind of money we have to put in to take up this hospital, going to St. Jude's right now. St. Jude's has been our case for years. How many years now? 10, 11, 12? I don't want to blame any administration, but we're getting screwed by every one of them. Absolutely. Yeah, we're getting screwed. Because in the first place, we knew very well that St. Lucia needed a new hospital for a time now, before even St. Jude's got burnt.
And that's why St. Jude's got burnt, because it was so archaic, and that's the other thing, you know. We accept all these gifts, and I'm glad you touched on the OKEU situation, because we accept all of this direct foreign aid and all of these gifts, and we never stop to think, is that gift going to be a lodestone around my neck, or is it going to actually lighten the load for us? We don't stop to think about that. We just accept it because we want the glory of saying we built monuments. And that's what it is. It's a monument. Because if it cannot be put into use, it's just a monument. It's just, like you said, an elephant. It's just sitting there looking at us. We can't use it. Yeah.
Let me continue on St. Jude's. Yeah, because I'm from the South. I need to talk about St. Jude's.
Talk about St. Jude's.
St. Jude's, when we first started, you know, we had a little part of the hospital that got burnt, right? It was the operating center or whatever. Administration came in, and which was the first administration, UWP, right? They decide, well, they're going to fix it. Whatever that got burnt, along the way, they say, well, they would make other changes in that stuff. But what I'm trying to say right now, as I said previously, both administrations have already told about St. Jude's had already made it's time that we need a new hospital. What was the problem that the administration that was there was just fix the part that was burned, and then later on think about building a new structure. That would be more feasible for us and our taxpayers' dollars. The one gone, the other one came in. What they told us, they would give us a state-of-the-art hospital. Imagine you building a new structure in an old
for old blueprint.
That means you have to break up everything to make it new. What it is that you cannot take the money you was going to break it up and build a new one, which you know we needed for so long. Come on. We go 9, 10 years. We had so many dates for opening this hospital. We never.
Every year it's going to be the last year that the St. Jude's staff is going to stay.
Administration go The other one come,
Mhm.
we into 3 years
Mhm.
into the other administration.
Mhm.
We still have crap going on St. Joseph. Our healthcare is in a mess in the south.
Mhm.
We have a stadium there. We don't know what's going to happen anytime soon. I see no roof on that stuff, nothing like that. Come on, Laura. If we are objecting enough and we say we want to save money in this country, why won't we think ahead and say we are not going to use our money uselessly? We know we need a new hospital, fix a little piece that would burn, and build a new one right away. The other one come and he say we're going to put a new state-of-the-art hospital in an old structure which you have to break up. They break up until they go, they never finish it. So what's going on, Laura? Tell the people what's going on.
What is going on?
Tired of taking people in this country for granted. It's time that we tell the people actually what's happening. We cannot go like that on as a nation and we have nobody to take care of our systems. We have a justice system that's in a mess. We have no
Every
magistrate.
institution in this country is broken. Every institution is broken.
Laura, I have to go. I will talk again.
Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate your contribution. And you know, speaking of healthcare, it was a politician who is making waves now. It wasn't then, but when the person made that statement, there was a politician in the making. And that person, I'll continue that thought in a minute. We have another call. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Laura,
Yes?
you should be ashamed of yourself.
Talk to me.
You're endorsing bad governance.
Talk to me.
You also make yourself an idiot the last time at St. Jude.
Talk to
Not an
me.
engineer. You comparing a doctor maker hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm an idiot and I'm making a fool of myself. And now you calling and you're saying that I'm endorsing bad governance and you're calling to do the exact same thing that you're accusing me of, because while a door cannot make a hospital, a building cannot, will not ever take the place of proper health care. And it will never, ever justify a person saying that you build at whatever cost. Doesn't matter what the cost is to build the hospital. It doesn't matter how much it's going to cost to maintain that hospital and to run that hospital. You're going to think about it after you've built it. So you build it, you don't know how you're going to furnish it, you don't know how you're going to put in all the equipment that you need, you don't know how you're going to purchase the beds to put in it. You're just going to build it. You're just going to build it and then think about how you're going to do it later on. So, you know, it's all about perspective. If a door is too small to accommodate a standard size of anything that's going to go in that door, then of course I'm going to point it out. But that's not the point right now. The point is, are we placing sufficient energies on healthcare in this country? Are we placing sufficient energy behind whatever decisions that we're going to put in, that we're going to enact? You know, so we're going to build a hospital because we need a hospital. Sure, no problem. But have we sat down and really thought about it? The previous caller said it best. We're going to put in a state-of-the-art hospital on using archaic blueprint. So we're going to use the old and we're going to put state-of-the-art in there. And it's the old that created the crisis, and Rick is going to, you know, laugh a little bit about that, which caused the crisis in the first place. You know, we had archaic electricals, we had all of these things. People died, for crying out loud, and you're going to knock on me because I said a door which obviously was too small to put in a regular size, a standard, anything. You know, sometimes we have to think about what we're talking about, and it's the same thing that we're just talking about, the culture, the mindset. Here, we have a culture in this country where we don't think, we're not creative in anything that we're doing. We just want to continue with the same rhetoric. And if whatever somebody's talking about is going to fall squarely on our plate, or it's going to damn somebody that we venerate, then, off with the head of the messenger, forget about the message. We have a call. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Yes, hi, good evening.
Yes.
Very interesting topic.
Talk to me.
Yeah, you'll be hitting some serious points there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I keep wondering, why politicians keep going in the same trend that the others keep using.
I've lost
Others
it.
keep
All right.
using the same trend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay, I'm there.
Right.
My phone going to cut off.
Okay.
You see, just like that administration that's there, they have done nothing to give the country work. And at the ending of this year, you're going to see they come in and flourish and give how much work for next year.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't the people open their eyes and stop being fooled by this?
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Put your feet down and get up. We, the government, don't control us. We control them, you know.
Exactly. I wonder the same thing. Why we allow a handful of men and women
17.
to dictate, well, yeah, 17, more than a handful, but I'm just being,
constituencies we have,
right.
17.
You're going to allow 17 people to dictate our future and our destiny
Imagine that.
when it's 180 or let's say 100,000 people who are going to put them there. 100,000
Imagine
people
that.
are going to put 17 people there, but we're going
7
to
people.
suffer the unimaginativeness, the uninnovativeness, their stupidity in some cases. We're going to suffer that for 5 years, every 5 years. We have another call online. Thank you for calling.
Good night, Laura.
Good night.
Laura, you agree that the healthcare is in a mess?
If I'm agreeing that healthcare is a mess, every institution in this country is a mess. Every institution is broken. Every single one.
What caused that?
What do you mean, what caused it?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
Asking a question, what caused it?
I'm asking you, what do you mean when you ask what caused it? Have you not been listening?
Because you was blaming the last administration. You remember that?
I'm blaming the last administration?
You was.
But if the last administration was complicit, do you think I'm going to agree with them?
Do you agree that is that present administration that stopped the hospital?
They stopped it, yes. They stopped the work on the hospital.
Now, I want to ask you a question.
But hold on before you ask the question. But I happen to believe that if we fixed the issue, we repaired, we rebuilt the burnt wing, and then we took the time out to think about how we're going to build a new hospital, how we're going to get the funding from the beginning to the end, instead of demanding, for a new hospital within 9 months of the old one, of a wing of the old one being burnt, I think the outcome would have been a far cry different. But that's my opinion.
No, the hospital is there. It doesn't matter. You blame a door.
I'm sorry?
It can be broken in seconds.
I didn't blame a door. I didn't blame a door. I was trying to make a point that we're rushing to do things, we're making things grandiose, and we have not sat and thought it out and to have a proper plan. We did not stop to think it out and to have a proper plan approved by DCA, doing all of those things on a new site or with all of the state-of-the-art things that we were asking for. So I was proving a point. A door does not make a hospital.
But Laura,
a hospital does not make a proper health care.
Laura, but there was a plan. There was a plan.
Where is the plan?
And they go according to the plan.
But where is the plan?
You don't build any structure without a plan.
Where is the plan? Because I do recall that there were interviews done and the chairperson of the DCA was saying that there was no plan. So where is the plan? And if it is the gentleman was lying, and if it is that the contractor was saying that today he comes, they ask him to build something, he builds it, then the next day, overnight, they ask him to break it down. If he was lying, why is it that we didn't hold these people to task? And why is it that we did not excoriate them and hold them responsible and accountable for the things that they were supposed to do that they did not do? But you're going to hold me accountable because I said a door was too small, which it was.
But
Is that the main issue here?
You heard about the engineers.
Sorry?
You heard about John Peters, King. Are you going to blame them for saying that the door is too small?
Am I going to blame them for saying that the door is too small? I don't understand your line of thinking.
You don't understand?
I cannot follow you. I'm sorry. I'm not following you.
Because what I'm trying to tell you, there was a door, right? You go and you measure with your arms and say that the door is too small. You didn't have the tip. There was engineers on that.
So here what the thinking of it is. I could take a tape and so many times you tell somebody 60 inches, you tell them 3 feet, you tell them 2 feet, but some people will not understand that. And my audience was obviously not an engineer, not a technician, but the everyday person who wants to understand things in their way. So that was the audience that I was driving at, not at the engineer. The engineer have their place.
It was wrong.
I'm sorry?
You was wrong.
What was wrong?
You was wrong.
I was wrong. How was I wrong?
the way you measured the thing, that was wrong. The way you measured the door, it was wrong.
Okay, all right. Let's just for argument's sake, let's say I was wrong. Okay, for argument's sake.
No.
Hold on.
Admit yours. Admit
let's
yours.
say for I'm not going to admit anything.
Admit yours wrong.
Let us say for argument's sake that I was wrong. Let us say for argument's sake I was wrong. How does that help us? How does that help the healthcare situation right now? How has it built the hospital? How has it encouraged? How has it repaired the crisis that we say we're in? And I agree totally. We've always had a healthcare crisis in St. Lucia. It didn't just happen last year, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. We've always had a crisis situation. We've always had people going to hospital and being misdiagnosed and being killed, pretty much murdered because of misdiagnosis. We've always had persons in the healthcare system who didn't care and allowed mother and child to die. We have always had situations where people come in with wounds that needed stringent care and send them home with Panadol.
Okay.
We've always had that. So tell me, when was healthcare not in crisis? How is it measuring a door with my arm span to help put things in perspective for certain people? How is that creating the crisis or ameliorating the crisis or doing anything to help a situation?
Are you pleased with what's going on at the stadium?
Sorry?
Do you pleased with what's going on at the stadium?
Am I pleased with going at the stadium?
What's going on at the stadium right now? Do you pleased with it?
Am I pleased
the state of the stadium?
But
do you pleased that they should have the stadium as a hospital?
I've always said the hospitadium is not a place for people. I've always said that cows bringing in ticks in the hospital is not a place fit for people to be treated for recuperating or anything. I've always said that. So your point is what now exactly? Your point is that because I have made my position, my personal position clear, and you have not made any position clear, your personal position. You've not made that. And you know what, sir? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contribution, but you're not taking us anywhere. We're not hearing anything. You were just hearing more rhetoric, and which is what my problem is. This is a culture of our people. Our culture of our people is that we see red or we see yellow, and there's nothing wrong with seeing red or yellow, but it cannot be blindly that you're accepting what your party says or what your party proffers as, the solution to it all. When the situation on the ground is we have always had a healthcare problem. We will always consistently have a healthcare problem because we, the people who elect 17 men and women to run this country, we continue to make excuses for them. They continue to spend ad hoc. They continue to spend monies willy-nilly to do what? To figure out who is creating or who is perpetrating bigger corruption and bigger bubble in this country. That's all they do. We have cases sitting in the justice system where politicians have been taken to task and nothing has happened. Not one politician in the history of this country, 40 years since we've been independent, has ever gone to jail for any alleged bubble or corruption. So don't come here and tell me that I am wrong for measuring a door with my arm span when you could totally see if I am not a tiny person and my arm span is this wide and a door is supposed to be yay wide, that obviously it is not making sense. I am not going to admit that I was wrong for measuring. We've done that all our lives. You go to the store and you want 12 boissiers of rope. That is what some people understand. You've got to speak the language that people understand. You don't have to always speak in for certain circles. If I'm speaking to Spanish people, I'm addressing Spanish people, and I'm speaking in English. You think they will understand what I'm saying? The language has to be correct. So don't come up here and tell me how, I'm supporting bad governance or, the previous administration was. The previous administration made countless errors, and they continue to make countless errors because you know what? They have never sat down and looked at where they went wrong. Nothing wrong with saying, okay, I went wrong there, and let's try to fix it. But you're coming up with no solutions for anything. And this administration here, this one, they're not going to be held accountable for anything. Because in a couple of years, we're either going to vote them back in or vote them out. And guess what we're going to do? If we vote them out, we're going to bring in the same tired, retired, has-been people that didn't do the job the last time. And another set of people are going to be happy for that. And they're going to spin all their spin like spiders do to ensure that they remain in power. And the other set, the other side, they're going to go into hibernation and scheme about how they're going to come back in the next 5 years. How they're going to destroy anything, any work that the administration in power is doing, how they're going to destroy it so that they can ensure that they get back. And you know what? The sad thing is, it's the same tired or retired has-beens who are recycled over and over and over again, pay lip service to women, and then when the women come in, so they use the women as tokens, and when the women come in, it's like Rick says, there are politicians in bras. They're just glory, you know, they have hair, they wear earrings, they wear skirts, or some don't have hair, some don't wear earrings, some look very butch, but the point is, they're just there as tokens. They're just there as tokens. They're not there meritoriously. They're there as tokens. And that's okay with them. And that's okay with the rest of us because you know what? Our party is in power. Not a problem with associating with any party. But once you are doing it blindly and once you cannot dissent, there is a serious problem with that. The indictment then is not on the politician. The indictment is on you. The indictment is on you for not thinking. The indictment is on you for not saying, you know what, I support you, but in this case, in this instance, you're wrong. And though I don't agree with the sum total of the philosophy or the ethos of the other guys, but on that particular issue, I stand with you. There's nothing wrong with that. That is what we call democracy. That is what we call free thinking. That is what we call, you know, being your own person. And if we can do that, then we can have a stronger and better nation, not one of inertia, not one where we're complicitly, tacitly endorsing stupidity, rape, murder, crime, and we just let it pass and we just let it slide because guess what? It doesn't matter because our party in power. And as long as our party in power and I can get 5 cents or $5 in some instances to block a hole, that's all that matters. It cannot be enough. We need to change our mindset. We need a paradigm shift. We need to change our culture into one where we're not stupid, into one where we are creative, into one where crime, no matter what is it, blue color, black color, red color, white color, any color crime is wrong, and that the persons who perpetrate them are going to feel the brunt of the law. We have to have a culture where we are forgiving and we are compassionate. And because somebody disagrees with us, it doesn't mean that that person is stupid. It means maybe to our minds they've done a stupid thing or they have a stupid thinking in that regard, but it does not make them any different from us. And it does not mean that we have to cast a blind eye willfully on what those in power have been empowered to do and then turn around and heap it on the other person. Forget about the messenger. Think about the message. Think about the legacy that you want to leave for the future generation. Think about the heritage that you want to leave. Think about the traditions that you want to change so that it can affect the culture of the future generation. That is what we're supposed to be thinking about, and that is what tonight is all about. It's not about mainstreaming. It's not about that. It's about stepping outside the box. It's about stretching ourselves and saying, yes, I support these guys, you know, but on that issue, I disagree with them. How the heck can you tell me a hospital, a wing in a hospital was burnt 10 years ago? Within 9 months, you're clamoring for it to be reopened and to give the people back their hospital and give the sportsmen and women back their stadium. And in 5 years, you could not do what you expected the previous guys to do in 9 months. You couldn't do it. Now, are the other guys right for having stopped work on the hospital? Some may say, absolutely, if you want to move right, if you think what was done before was wrong, and they were on the wrong wicket, you have to stop and rethink, okay, where are we, how did we get there, and what's the way forward? Is it supposed to take 3 years? I don't think so. But sometimes you need to stop and look back and to figure out how did you get where you are presently? What did you do back then that was so wrong that caused you to be here and to move forward? Because let me tell you something, if that wing of the hospital was rebuilt, and then we took the time to sit down and to map out how we're getting the funding, how we're going to do about it, have a proper plan, have a proper contractor, have the right architects, you know, not concerned with building monuments, then we would have had a hospital in the South. at least a functioning one. It may not have been a state of the art, but we would have had a functioning hospital in the South, which would have been a far cry better than the tick-infested hospitalium that we have right now. Now we want to talk about St. Jude's, but what about the OKEU, which has been sitting there, and the EU has been asking us for years and years and years to commission the hospital? What did the previous administration do if we want to go there? They put a Band-Aid over it, and that is what we do all the time. We have Band-Aid solutions to everything. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a naming exercise that went nowhere. So you named the hospital OKEU. Happy for that. So after you've named the hospital, you've cut the ribbons, you expect the hospital to be commissioned a few months later. What happened? No commissioning of the hospital. You said the hospital was ready for commissioning, but what did you do instead of commissioning the hospital? They spent the year that you had to commission the hospital. What did you do? You quickly called an election because you thought the opposition had their pants, had their breeches down between around their legs, and that you would have tripped them up, and that you would have come back in and have your grand day in the sun, supposedly, and open up the OKEU hospital, only to find out, and I got that from a credible source in the previous administration, that OKEU hospital was nowhere near being ready to be commissioned because they had no way, they had no idea, they did not have any knowledge, they did not have any way of commissioning the hospital and maintaining the hospital. They could have opened the hospital, but how do you maintain the hospital? They did not know. They did not have the wherewithal to do it, and so they thought, okay, let us rush the elections, call it a snap elections, so that the other guys will be tripped up and they will buy more time. That's not how it works. If you can't do it, come to the people and be honest. And don't blame the messenger. Don't blame the messenger. Look at the message. You want to listen to a man who has been discredited internationally. Internationally has been discredited. He's a persona non grata in several territories. You want to believe that and hold everything that he says with a grain of salt as the truth. Swear on it, on the Bible and the Quran. But and it begs the question, is it because I'm female that you want to excoriate me and tell me that I was wrong? What the hell is wrong with you? Anyway, this is all the time we have for now. Thank you so much for participating. And I did not want to get this all riled up and all this passionate. But when I hear my own people deliberately miss the point, try to cover the people's eyes, fool them, put wool over their eyes, and say, oh my God, it's you that's the problem. It's not me. It's not the guys that we've entrusted with our care. That you are the problem. You little black girl from nowhere, you are the problem because you're trying to get people to think for themselves. Let us change that mindset. Let us change our culture. Let us leave something worthwhile for our future generation. Let them inherit something, a culture, a heritage that is worth venerating, that is worth being put up on a pedestal and saying, yes, boy, this past generation was a great generation. They caused their government, administration, whichever administration, to stop and think and put the people first. And that is what's important, not the messenger. That is what's important. Until next time, adieu.
You get